Hello, and welcome to all of CPA Ontario's members and students. We're going to get started now. Today's event is part of our Game Changers webinar series. Your next promotion, it's yours to lose, and is brought to you by CPA Ontario's Career Services team in partnership with Lannick Group. We have had a great response to this webinar topic and are excited to introduce our guest speaker today, Jon Corfield, CPA, CMA, and Vice President Client Services at Lannick Group. Jon will share some information about his background as well as facilitate today's topic. But first, I want to mention a few quick housekeeping items. You can find a PDF copy of today's slide deck in the handout section of the webinar toolbox. Also, make sure that you download the Workplace Value Tracker worksheet by going to the link sent in the reminder email or within the PDF slide deck attachment. Please note that CPD credits will be awarded based on participation of the live session, and you'll receive an email confirming CPD credits awarded within 5 business days. There is no quiz following the webinar. However, during this webinar, we will be conducting live polls, so please be prepared to submit your answers through a multiple-choice Q&A format. This webinar is your opportunity to ask questions related to our presentation today, and we encourage you to type questions you'd like to ask our speaker using the chat feature located on your control panel, and we'll take some time to answer as many as we can at the end of our session today. Stay tuned after the Q&A as we'll be sharing information on some upcoming events for CPA Ontario members and students, including an exclusive opportunity to meet with a member of the Lannick team for resume and job search advice. Thank you, and please welcome Jon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. First off, before I get started, I just want to say a huge thank you to CPA Ontario for the opportunity to talk today about a topic that I know I'm very passionate about, which is career development. It's fantastic to see such a high level of interest in today's session. We have over 2,000 registrants for today's call, so definitely look forward to hopefully offering some value to all of you. So thank you for taking the time to be with us. I'd also like to say a big thank you to all of the clients and candidates that we have on the line today. We value the relationships with all of you and your business very much, so thank you. I think today's topic is really relevant for CPAs at all levels within an organization as well as across any industry sector, and that's really how to position yourself for your next promotion. So before I get into it, the first thing I'd like to do is to ask an online poll question. And that is how many people on the call today are hoping to get promoted within the next year?
And we're going to give you a minute or so to fill out this poll. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a minute and let people kind of answer the question, and I'll just quickly cover off the agenda for today's session. So kind of first area that I'm going to cover will be how to get on the senior leadership team's radar, how many people want to document, so how to document and quantify your value within the organization, how to successfully ask for and have that promotion conversation, how to negotiate a winning comp package once you've been promoted, and how to ensure that you set yourself up for success in your new role once you've been promoted. So we have the response from the online poll, and 73% of you say you want to get promoted in the next year. So that's fantastic. I definitely think we've got some good tips and ideas in here to consider, and hopefully some of this information will help you achieve that goal. Yeah, so really I think today's session is going to be all about how to position yourself well for any performance evaluation, promotion, or compensation negotiation that you might get yourself into. So quickly to start, I'll just do a quick background on myself. So I'm currently the VP Client Services within the permanent search practice here at Lannick. I've been with Lannick for 7 years, and I have an opportunity in my role to work with clients across a wide range of different industry sectors. I love what I do because I get to connect with financial leaders across many different industry sectors, learn about their businesses, and really connect fantastic candidates to these opportunities. I get a lot of fulfillment from helping individuals progress through their careers and helping my clients land really top talent that's available in the marketplace. Prior to joining Lannick, I had spent about 4 years with a company called ADP in a couple different business development roles. I did a joint CMA MBA program with Wilfrid Laurier University, and then completed my CPA designation while working for a company called Stryker for about 2 years, and started with Lannick 7 years ago. So for those of you that aren't super familiar with Lannick, we're actually Canada's largest regional specialist staffing firm. We make roughly 1,000 placements annually across the GTA. Lannick has 3 sort of unique or distinct divisions. So I'm a member of the Lannick Finance and Accounting business, which is focused on placing CPAs in mid to senior level roles. I work in our permanent search division, but we also have a contract team that places people on interim assignments at a mid to senior level. The sister company to Lannick is called ProCount Staffing, and ProCount's focus is junior to mid-level roles, both on a full-time basis, as well as placing accounting temps. So those can be any type of transactional role, receivables, payables, staff accountant, payroll, and any sort of more transactional type position. The third business under the Lannick umbrella is called Lannick Technology. So Lannick Technology was launched 7 years ago, and they focus on roles at all levels, both full-time, temp, and contract within the technology space. One of the key differentiators of the Lannick Group relative to other service providers in the market is something that we call our dedicated service model. And what that is a primary function of our business. And really what it is we separate our client services function from our recruitment function. So we have a team of individuals, myself included, that focus on managing relationships with our clients, and then we have a separate team of people that focus on managing relationships with our candidates. What this allows us to do in practice is ensure that our clients have full visibility to any candidate within our database at any point in time, as opposed to only having visibility to candidates that are with the account manager that they might be working with, which is how some of our competitors operate. And then on the candidate side, it's ensuring that our candidates have full visibility to any job that might be a fit for their search parameters. So really, the ultimate aim is providing a higher level of service and better visibility both to our clients and candidates. Okay, so let's get into it. So in the first section, I'm going to talk a bit about how to get yourself on the senior leadership team's radar. Some of the important questions that I'm going to cover off in this section are: how can you get yourself known to the top executives within your company? How to become somebody that's a high potential resource within your business? How to be the person that's the first choice for a big project, systems implementation, or any other highly visible engagement? And how do you be the person that's winning awards, not only in finance and recognized as a star across the organization? So how to stand out in the crowd. So from my experience working with candidates across many different industry sectors, one of the common mistakes that I've noticed is that a lot of people think coming into the office, doing your job day to day is enough to get noticed. And I think that that's a fundamental mistake and something that people really need to recognize and try to go beyond that. In finance, from my experience, both working in finance and dealing with a lot of financial leaders, the technical performance really is table stakes. And what I mean by that is, being able to do the day-to-day job will kind of allow you to keep your job, but it's not necessarily enough to be that high-performing individual that's kind of on the radar to get promoted. From my experience, what really differentiates people who move up the ranks within the organization is people that have superior soft skills. So these are the individuals that build relationships sort of within their teams, also across the business with people in different functions, people that are able to get buy-in to different ideas, and people that are change agents that can lead a project, for example, systems implementation, or streamlining processes, or kind of changing the way that things are done and making things better, right? It's the people that have those superior soft skills that are able to to do those things that tend to move through the organization. Now, most companies will have formal sort of opportunities to get to know your colleagues. So, the company Christmas party, the annual kickoff, every company has these types of events where you get to socialize with your peers. What I think is important not to forget and not to take for granted is, those casual sort of interactions that you might have. So, for example, when you're in the lunchroom or going for coffee, asking your colleagues or peers, what they got up to on the weekend, asking them, how their holidays were. It's really important to, get to know people on a personal level, not too personal, but get to know them, right? Because really, being well liked, performing well in your role, and being visible is really key to moving up through the organization. I can give you an example with Lannick. On Thursdays, a lot of times, people will go for drinks after work. It's not something that's mandatory, but I can tell you it's a great opportunity for people to get to know one another, to kind of decompress, and really just to get to know your peers and build those relationships. So the key thing is to know your colleagues, know the culture, and to sometimes give up some of your personal time to invest in those relationships. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about communication etiquette. So in today's business world, there are lots of different mediums that we use to communicate. So anything from text messaging, instant messaging tools, email, and face-to-face meetings. The key point to remember and to understand when it comes to communication etiquette is, using the appropriate form of communication in the appropriate situation. And there's sort of two different areas that I've highlighted here that you can use to analyze what tool might be relevant in a certain situation. So the first is the level of importance. So if the level of importance is quite high, so for example, if it's a performance review, or if it's a critical project that is sort of high priority for the senior management team, likely in those cases, you're going to want to schedule some face-to-face meetings, right? Having those face-to-face meetings, ensuring that people are really bought in, is going to be important. If the level of importance is low, so for example, if it's just pushing some month-end tasks along, just getting a quick update, likely a text or an instant message or email will be sufficient in those cases, right? So the key point here is using your professional discretion, understanding the environment, and just managing things appropriately. When you are having face-to-face meetings, you definitely want to be mindful of your colleagues' time. Keep them short, efficient, on task, and try to get them done on time as much as possible. So the next topic I'd like to cover off, a couple things here. So managing up, as well as the importance of booking regular career development meetings with your boss. So first thing I'd like to do is just define what I mean by managing up. So to me, managing up means kind of going above and beyond the day-to-day tasks in your role to try to add more value to your boss and to your team. So this kind of means going above and beyond, again, what the day-to-day tasks look like. The second key point on this slide is really the importance of kind of taking ownership of booking professional development meetings with your boss. So, some managers are better than others at really understanding and helping to guide the career development of their staff. And, if you have a manager that, maybe doesn't dedicate as much time as they could, I think the onus is on the individual to make sure that they're leading this. So, having that conversation, letting your boss know that you'd like to have that regular touch point with them to kind of highlight things that are going well, areas where, you may want to gain certain skills. That's going to make all the difference in ensuring that you're sort of on track towards whatever the career goals that you have. You definitely want to be conscious of your manager's time, keep things short and efficient, but it is important to have those regular update meetings. So what to cover off at a professional development meeting with your boss. So Couple key areas. So I would say you definitely want to focus on any of the highlights or wins. You can talk about projects that you've been involved in. So, if it's a systems implementation, if it's, shortening the month-end cycle, if, the company is purchasing some equipment, whatever the case is, you can talk about what's going well, who's involved in the project, what any key learnings are that happened, and really just have a quick post-mortem so that you can apply some of those learnings in future and really start to continue to add value within your team and perhaps across the company. It's also a great opportunity to talk about any challenges that you've encountered. So, if there's a project that is not going well, why is it not going well? Do you need additional resources? Is there, something that needs course correction? Are there performance issues or personality issues with other people in the team? You want to address these things early on. As a manager myself, I can tell you that I really appreciate when my direct reports come to me and they make me aware of any sort of roadblocks or potential issues before it becomes a major problem. So, and I try to do the same thing with my boss. So, keeping them aware if we're on target towards meeting our monthly goals or quarterly goals, and if we're not, how can we strategize well in advance to put resources in place or change a process or whatever the case may be to ensure that we ultimately meet those goals. So, it's about keeping people informed and helping to guide towards the ultimate goals. So once you've made yourself visible, I think the next step in the process to follow is how do you quantify your value? So in finance, people are often involved in a large number of process improvements, cost-saving initiatives, and projects that add real value to the organization. From my experience, most people don't document everything that they've done. So we're going to spend a bit of time here to provide some ideas to teach you how to do this. So what's your value to the organization? I suggest maintaining a worksheet where you're going to track any projects, deliverables, and achievements that you've been working on. You can include, in this worksheet, you can include internal clients that you've dealt with, people that were involved in the project, who managed you, and what the specific deliverables were that you were responsible for. So why should I create this worksheet? Well, good question. Well, there's a few great reasons. So oftentimes people's bonuses are tied to measurable criteria. So it's a great way to track how you're progressing towards your bonus. Secondly, if at some point in the future you want to ask for a bonus or a raise, this is a great way to quantify the value that you've created for the organization and what your contribution has put towards the bottom line. Also, if at some point you're going to look externally for that next job opportunity, this is a great way to kind of augment or add to your resume. So these are awesome examples to have available if at some point you're in an interview situation in the future. I can tell you in my role that our clients engage us to go to market to find passive candidates for them. So these are people that are in jobs that aren't necessarily looking for that next job. And I've had situations in the past where I might be working on a very senior level search, for example, a VP finance role or a CFO role, and I'm calling people that might be, sort of one level below in terms of title, so maybe a director or a controller, and they're interested in the job, but they don't have this information available. So, having it available is only going to benefit you if and when you get that phone call, because you never know when that next fantastic opportunity is going to land sort of on your lap. So what should you include in your worksheet? So I've really broken this down into two key categories. So the two key categories are cost savings and strategic projects. So in the cost savings section, this would include ideas like reviewing the contracts of suppliers or vendors, looking at key processes and times when you've looked at key processes and found ways to streamline or eliminate them, rationalization of internal controls. It could be implementing a new system to automate certain transactions, or even offshoring of certain functions. In the strategic bucket, this can include ideas like being involved in a merger or acquisition, the launch of a new product or service, any type of business case for a capital investment or major expenditure. A key point to note here is that CPAs are often involved in many different projects over the course of a year. And even if your involvement is small in sort of a large number of different projects, when you add up that value that you create over time, it can be significant. So don't discount the work that you do. It does add real value, and it's important to quantify these things. So Lannick has actually, so if you don't have a tracking mechanism today, we've actually created something that I think is a great starting point for people to use. So I've pulled that up here for you to take a quick look at. The key point to remember here is it's not about the spreadsheet, right? This is not rocket science. Everyone on this call, is a CPA. You're all very bright and you all know how to create a spreadsheet. So the point rather is that you want to have something where you're tracking this information, because the truth is most people aren't doing this, and if you're doing it, it's going to be a differentiator for you not only in your current company but as you progress throughout your career, and it's really going to document everything that you've done and everything that you're proud of in your current roles and over the course of your career. So I'm going to just quickly run through this example that we've put up. So this is a controller, and some of the initiatives that they've been involved in from 2015 to 2016 in their consumer packaged goods company. So you can look in the cost saving section under the 2015 area. You can see that this person was involved in negotiating a better rate with their payroll provider. They automated some AP transactions through a company in India. They reduced the month-end close process by 3 days, and they're involved in establishing new banking relationships. In the strategic section, some examples would include the ERP implementation, a new product launch, sale of manufacturing equipment, and being part of a due diligence team on a key acquisition. And then there's more examples in the 2016 section. To support that document, we've got kind of outlined more detail kind of in behind that cover sheet. So, the payroll project, as an example, this controller had attended meetings with the various payroll providers, and they assessed the pros and cons of the various options, and then they negotiated the contract and were involved in the implementation process. They'd worked with their colleagues from HR and IT, and they successfully were able to outsource the payroll to a major payroll provider. During the AP automation, they sourced and interviewed several service providers and were involved working with the AP manager to help change certain internal processes to help work with this provider. And you can see that reduced the spend by 50%. And there's several other examples as you kind of scroll through. So great way to kind of track all the value that you've created. And I hope that you can find some benefit from using this document. It would have been in the link that was sent out by CPA, or feel free to connect with CPA Career Services if you don't have the link, and you can definitely get that as well. So in the next section, I'm going to take a bit of time to talk about asking for the promotion. So now that you've gotten on the senior leadership team's radar and you've documented the value that you've created, you're ready to ask for that promotion. So in this section, we'll consider what to consider before you have that conversation and how to have that conversation effectively. So the first step to consider in this process is really to look inward to define what you want your own career path to look like. So I suggest taking a 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year view and creating a rough plan to help guide or chart a realistic path for yourself. A great way to help formulate this is to speak to other peers, mentors that you value their input, and look at different paths that are available within your industry. Some other important points to consider are the size of your company, the industry that you operate in, and your company culture. And remember, there are exceptions to every rule. So just because one person has taken a certain path, that doesn't mean that that's going to be the same path for you to follow. you really need to carve out what you want your own path to look like. So we've provided here an example of what the Lannick career path looks like. We do have a very well-defined career path here at Lannick based on objective performance measures. So you can kind of see it goes from left to right. People typically come in as either an associate or senior associate. They spend about a year in that role before moving kind of to the next role, which is a manager or senior manager. And then similarly would spend about a year, and if they're continuing to perform well, oftentimes people will kind of move into the senior manager or manager role and might start to manage some people. From there, the next level would be kind of senior manager or director, and then as people progress, they can become senior director or VP. Would also like to quickly note that Lannick is hiring, so if there is any interest, we absolutely love to talk to any CPAs that are interested in recruitment. By all means, feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn or send me an email. Happy to share that. And I'd be happy to put you in touch with the appropriate people here at Lannick. The market is excellent right now, and we love having conversations with people that are interested in a career in professional recruitment. So once you've defined what you want your career path to look like, the next step really is to take a look at how your company defines finance careers within their business. So the way that I look at this is I really think of it on a continuum. So companies will generally fall somewhere along a continuum. So at one end of the continuum, you have large, well-structured corporate organizations, such as a Big Four public accounting firm or maybe a bank or something equivalent to that. And in these organizations, typically, they have very well-defined levels, pay bands, and have pretty objective criteria to move through the different levels or roles within the organization. So some important points to understand is, or to think about are, do those bands or levels align well with what you're looking for? Are there mandated amounts of time to spend in each of those roles? And, what do the pay bands typically look like? At the other end of the continuum, you've got sort of technology startups, right? So these would be new companies with, a lot less by way of formal policy or structure. They tend to be a bit more fluid in terms of how people move through the ranks. And then somewhere in the middle, you've got kind of mid-sized companies. So they might have some of the structure of a bank or a Big Four firm, but not necessarily, but a little bit more as compared to a technology startup. So if you work for an organization that doesn't have a well-defined career path, some ideas to consider would be you can take a look at another top performer within that business and try to model your path after theirs. You can take some advice from other people that are within the industry, and you can really understand some of the skills that you're going to need to gain in order to advance. So, a couple examples here. Oftentimes people will need to make lateral moves before they make a sort of jump up in level within their company. A great example is somebody that might be a manager of financial reporting today. Their ultimate goal is to become controller. They may need to spend some time in a role that's focused on planning and analysis to round out their skill set before they advance to that controllership position. Similarly, if someone is in tax and they're in a tax manager role, maybe the role is focused heavily on compliance, and their ultimate goal is to be a director of tax. At some point, they're definitely going to need to gain the tax planning skill set before they move forward to that next stage in their career. So once you've developed a career path for yourself and you have a good understanding in terms of how your company defines finance careers within their organization, the next thing to look at is how is the company performing financially. So even if you're hitting out of the park in your role, everything is going well, if the company is not doing well relative to the goals and objectives that they've set out, the timing might not be right to have that promotion conversation. So some important points to think about before you have that discussion with your boss or with HR is whether or not the company is growing, whether they're hiring, whether there's budget in place for someone at that next level that you're targeting, and whether the macroeconomic environment is favorable within your industry sector. If all of these things are positive, then you're probably safe to move forward. So now that you have an understanding in terms of what your career path is what you want your career path to look like, as well as what your company defines and the company is performing well, the next step is to level up in your role. So what do I mean by leveling up? So to me, this means acting like a leader in your current role and taking on additional responsibilities of that next role, even before you have a formal promotion. In my role, I talk to financial leaders every day, and many of the people that I talk to will tell me that once they've gotten that formal promotion, they're merely being recognized for the work that they've already been doing. So, what I mean by this is, people that are promoted typically are starting to take on more and more work and really help their team and their boss and their organization with additional projects and duties even before they're promoted. Something that goes without saying, hard work and prioritization are critical. One of the common sort of concepts or terms that I hear a lot, these days is something called work-life integration. So, to me, I think what this means is people really need to prioritize their careers and really need to, try to work their lives around that in a lot of cases. So, some good examples might be, responding to emails in the evenings, logging on from home. A lot of times people are needing to spend sort of time attending events in the evenings or, responding to an email on vacation. Making your career a priority is going to be critical if you want to be that person that is kind of moving through the ranks. And the last point I kind of want to make on this slide is that it's important to be your own champion. So what I mean by this is, again, if you're not prioritizing and if you're not focused on, being that top performer within the business, nobody else is going to worry about it for you. So you really need to be the person that's owning your role, owning your own success, and focusing on these things. Otherwise, you may not sort of advance along the path that you hope to. The last step to consider when having the conversation with your boss is whether or not you have any skill set gaps. So if you've had those regular professional development meetings, a lot of times these things would have come up at some point throughout those conversations. Again, to use the example I had used before, if you're a manager of financial reporting and you want to be a controller, it would probably be pretty obvious that you're going to need to gain that planning and analysis experience. And, hopefully the organization and your boss is supportive of you kind of gaining those skills at some point when it makes sense. These things shouldn't come as a surprise if there may be additional training that is required. So, if you're in tax and you need to take the in-depth course, having these conversations and being proactive is going to be key as you continue to progress in your career. I think a really important point here on this slide is not to forget about your soft skills. So, again, dealing with many financial leaders in Toronto, one of the common things that I hear is how important, relationship building skills, managing relationships with different functions. The more senior you move throughout your career, the more and more important the soft skills are going to become. So it becomes less and less about the technical and more about the ability to lead, influence, and really manage relationships within your organization and potentially with clients as well. So if you've leveled up and you're working your way closer to that promotion, I've got a few practical points to consider to ensure that you're prepared to have that conversation with your boss. So first point is you want to do your homework before you have that conversation. It's important to have an understanding of what people are earning at the role that you're targeting. A big part of what I do is educating clients and candidates about salary ranges at certain levels within various industries. Another important point to consider is what path your manager followed. So if your manager So say you're in a manager role and you report into a controller or a director, and your boss had spent 3 or 4 years as a manager before they were promoted. Oftentimes that's going to impact their view on how people progress in their careers. People's sort of views on career development are often influenced by their own paths. So you want to be sensitive to that, and you want to ensure that you're mindful of the path that your boss has followed before you have that conversation. Second key point here is you want to be prepared to have the answers to the time frame of when you'd like to be promoted, what you'd like your title to be, the compensation plan that you hope to have, and all of these items should be in line with what's reasonable in the marketplace. And the last point here is ensuring that your promotion is going to keep you on track with the personal career path that you've charted out for yourself. So now that you've taken the necessary steps to have that promotion conversation and your company has said yes, I'm going to spend a bit of time on how to navigate that compensation negotiation successfully. So the first step before you have the conversation is to take stock of everything that the company is currently providing for you. So I've really broken these down into two separate buckets. So the first bucket is direct compensation items. So these items would include base salary, bonus, RSP matching, any deferred compensation, any perks. So your CPA dues, benefits, parking, anything else like that. Those are all sort of direct comp items which you can quantify pretty easily. The second bucket is something that I've referred to here as intrinsic compensation. So these items can include the company culture, any flexibility that you have in your role, work-life balance, the people that you work with. Do you like the people that you work with? Is it a supportive culture? Is it fun? And anything altruistic. So for example, do you connect with the mission of the company? Do you get fulfillment in terms of what the company is doing? All of those things are intrinsic and they're important. And certainly you can place a value on some of these items when looking at what's currently being offered and everything that you have in your current role and in your current company. So once you've evaluated your current comp plan, you're ready to discuss what you want your future comp plan to look like with your boss and with your HR team. So when you're having this conversation, it's very important to be very gracious, be very thankful, letting them know that you are appreciative of everything that is offered to you, and just setting a positive tone for that conversation. The preparation is going to be key when you're having this conversation. So using any salary surveys, bringing in that value tracker document that you've been using, all of that is going to be important, especially if there's a gap between what it is that you're looking for and the pay band in the role that you're targeting. It's very important to keep this conversation professional, to be confident. If you have built strong relationships within the organization, if you've added that value to your company, the conversation's likely going to go well. And remember, you never want to give an ultimatum. This is probably the worst thing that you can do. So keep it positive, focus on the value that you've created, focus on the fact that you're very happy in the organization and you want to be with the company for a long time, and it should go well. So what should you do if your ideal salary and title don't align with the company pay bands? So what I suggest is trying to create a return on investment for your personal role and your performance. So there are really two key items you need to do this. So you can determine your cost to the organization using those direct compensation items that I outlined previously. So you can figure out a rough idea of what your all-in cost is to the company. And then using your value tracker, you can look at what type of monetary value you've created for the company, right? And using these two numbers, you can calculate a return on investment for your role within the business. I have seen it where, pay bands, tend to be or can be rigid in some organizations, and in some organizations, they can change them based on the value that an individual is creating for the company. So, this is an objective way to really look at the value that you've created, and sometimes a company might be open to making an exception to a certain rule. So it's important to understand that. It's also very important to understand that title is only one component to sort of a role or a compensation plan. So from my experience, using a controller example, somebody that's a controller within a smaller private company, their role might be very different from a controller in a large publicly traded organization. So, the title is important, but it's only one element of the comp plan. So, not fixating too much on title is going to be important. In my job, working with a lot of top employers across the GTA, people will look beyond the title. So, focus more on the responsibilities and what it is that you're doing in the role, and you should be fine. So once you've successfully asked for that promotion and negotiated a new comp plan, the most important step in the process is to ensure that you're setting yourself up for success in that new role. In the final section of the presentation, I'm going to share some tips and ideas about how to plan for this next step. So like your boss, you're likely going to need to work with a successor to fill your previous role. The amount of time that you're going to need to spend on this transition is going to depend on a few critical factors. So first off, is this new role going to be sort of within the same team and within the same department within finance, or are you moving into a brand new role with brand new responsibilities? Second point, which will determine how much time you'll need to spend, is there a successor lined up, or does the company need to go to market to find a successor for this position? Third point, any projects that you have on the go, if there's a systems implementation going on, if the company is in the middle of an acquisition or a divestiture, all of these factors are going to impact the amount of time that you need to spend. Also, the final point is the time of year, or the time of year that it is. So if it's quarter end, if it's year end, if it's month end, if it's a peak period of the year, that'll also determine sort of how much time you're going to need to spend to help sort of offload your previous responsibilities to the next person that's taking it over. A key point here to note is that if you can be involved in the process, if the company does go external to find someone for this new role, it's always helpful. Likely you're going to need to spend a lot of time with that individual, getting them up to speed, helping them to be successful. So if you can be involved in the interview and selection process, it's definitely going to be to your benefit. And there's a chance that you might even be their boss. So, being involved in that process is going to be key. So once you have a strong person in place in your own role, in your old role, it's important to schedule regular meetings with all the key stakeholders in your new position. So if you have new direct reports, you definitely want to start building those relationships right away. Get to know these people as individuals. Try to understand what their career goals are. Let them know that you're supportive to help them in their development, and what you plan to do to help them in their development. If you're going to be working closely with any new business partners, so for example, if you're supporting senior sales leaders or operations leaders, you definitely want to spend that time working with them to build those relationships as well. And a key point here is, I think in a lot of cases, people, once they enter into a new role, people are eager, they're keen, they want to make a contribution right away, and the tendency can be to make a lot of changes early on without really understanding what the priorities are and what's needed. So my advice here, take your time before you make any major changes. It's always good to create a 30, 60, 90-day plan, discuss it with your boss, ensure that it's in line with the company goals, and that you really have it nailed down, the key priorities, before you make any major changes. Last point here is, once you've been in the role for a while and you've started to kind of get your footing, you may need to ask for some additional resources. So once you start to make a contribution, you start to really understand what the requirements are and what the goals are, you may need to ask for some additional resources. But you definitely want to get into the role and really understand what's needed before you start to ask for any more people to help you. So once you've settled into the new role and you've started to build those relationships and have outlined the plan, I suggest following the same steps that you used to get that promotion in the first place. So first off, ensure that you're getting noticed in your new job as you did in the previous one. It's always important to continue to update those tracking documents with the cost savings and strategic opportunities that you've been involved in and the value that you've created. Document your progress against the goals and objectives that you have set out, and ensure that you're booking those regular update meetings with your manager and keep working your way along the career path that you build for yourself. So I want to say thank you very much, and we're going to move to the question phase of the webinar.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jon. Yes, we've received a number of questions from the attendees, so we'll start with the first one here. How effective are you at placing personnel with a finance background in different functions such as supply chain?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, we definitely will work on roles here at Lannick where, it could be in operations, it could be, a role with a bit of a marketing bent. We would definitely take a look at any job description and really understand sort of what the profile is of the individual that a company is looking at. Generally speaking, what we look at is what the qualifications are of the individual that our clients are looking for. So for example, if a company wants to hire a CPA or somebody with an MBA or a CFA, likely we will have candidates, but we kind of look at it on a case-by-case basis where, we know what our firm is particularly strong at filling, the roles that we're particularly strong at filling, and we know where, there may be a better service provider for that company. And, if it is a fit, then we'll definitely help. If it's not a fit, we don't want to waste anyone's time, and we'll be upfront about that. But yes, we definitely do place the odd person kind of outside of finance. It's not something that we do every day, but we definitely would look at it and make that assessment.
Okay, great. The next question is, can you give me some suggestions on how to improve soft skills? It seems to be important in career development.
Sure. I think there are a lot of different ways to do that. So I think, there's different components of soft skills. Public speaking is one. There's sort of services like Toastmasters. A lot of companies will offer that. Networking, so public speaking, getting to know your colleagues. I think it's a lot about social skills, right? So, I think people need to kind of do these things a lot of times during their personal time. So, whether it's public speaking or whether it's, figuring out how to build relationships with people. I know there's a lot of courses available, but I think a lot of these things are, people need to spend their individual time to figure out, how to improve themselves.
Okay, great. The next question is around being visible to management. Any suggestions if they're in a different office or in the U.S.?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. From my experience, if people are in a different office, I know, when I'd worked for Stryker, we wanted, because Stryker is an American headquartered company and I was working in the Canadian office, we wanted to get some visibility to the finance leaders down in the US. And, ultimately the senior finance leaders in Canada, started to build relationships with the leaders in the US business, and they created kind of quarterly conferences, which different people at different levels could attend. So, I think it's important. Obviously, there's going to be cost constraints, but if there is a way to kind of physically meet some of these people that you're going to be working with, it is very important. I think trying to figure out ways, being opportunistic to have those meetings, right? So, most companies will have sort of social events where, the whole company attends. So, you want to be that person that's having the conversation with the senior leaders, and letting them know, what your role is all about, what's happening on within your team, and kind of using those, as I said in the presentation, some of those more casual opportunities as well. Just a quick hello. A lot of times the leaders, even if you are in a different office, they'll likely kind of make a trip into your office from time to time. So making sure that you're the person to go up and introduce yourself, let them know what your role's all about, any challenges that are happening, any great projects that you're working on. I think it's just a lot about being proactive and opportunistic, and taking every opportunity that you can to meet those people. Or even, I've seen in previous companies where they might have a mentorship program. So for example, just reaching out, sending a LinkedIn message, letting someone know that you're interested in getting a mentor. You'd be surprised if you ask a question, how open certain people might be to having a quarterly 30-minute discussion over lunch, right? So I think it's all about being proactive.
Okay, great. We have two more questions. The next one is, how long should one wait to ask, sorry, let me try it again. How long should one wait to ask for another raise or promotion once they've been granted one?
Yeah, so I think this is a great question. I think it, not to be ambiguous, but it really does depend. So I think, you need to consider a lot of the factors that I'd covered off during the presentation. So if, looking at what other people have done in terms of their paths, and also, how is the company performing, right? So, really promotions happen as a result of two key things. So how are you performing in your role, and is the company growing, right? So if the company is growing and if finance roles are being created within the business, that's going to create opportunities for people that are top performers. So there is no, one rule to asking that question, but you definitely want to use your professional judgment, and you want to look at what other people have done. There are exceptions to every rule, but you want to be reasonable, right? So once you get promoted and you're in that next new job, you're likely going to need to make a significant contribution before you move into that next role. So it'll probably be, a period of time, and the more senior you move within your career, oftentimes the length of time that you spend in a role is going to be longer. So, once you move from senior manager to controller, typically people will spend anywhere from 3 to 5 years, could be longer, as a controller before they move to director or VP, right? So again, it depends on the company, it depends on your performance, it depends on all those factors, and you really have to use your judgment before you have that conversation.
Okay, great. And our last question here, when taking credit for success, what percentage should be personal achievement versus team achievement?
Yeah, so good question. I think from my experience, a fundamental mistake that's made by a lot of the finance professionals that I work with is, finance people tend to be very humble, based on my experience. I know that's a generalization, but oftentimes people don't, they're not as forthright at kind of taking credit for work that they've done, right? And I think you need to be, because you don't want to be the person that's rubbing everyone the wrong way by saying that you did everything, but you also need to know that you can take credit for work that you've done. And one of the common tips that we provide to people in interviews is use I as opposed to we. So when you're interviewing, it's I did this, my role had this impact, we achieved this type of return on investment as a result of the project that I was involved in. And a lot of people, from my experience, they'll use the term we, when it would be more appropriate for them and better for them, frankly, quickly to focus on what they did, as long as you're being honest and you're not sort of, overstating what you've done. So, you can be conservative about your contribution, but it's okay to let your boss or let the senior leadership team know what your role was in a positive professional way. And you're not trying to tear anybody else down. You're just talking about what you did, right? And you can also give other people credit as well. You can give yourself credit, but you can also give other people credit, and let people know that your colleagues had a great contribution to a project, but you were involved in a certain area, and this is how it helped and where things were beneficial.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And if you have more questions, please feel free to email careerservices@cpaontario.ca, and we can direct the questions to the Lannick team. So thank you very much, Jon. Wonderful. It's very interesting. And we're going to switch gears here. I've got a few reminders for you. The first one is that Lannick presents Viewpoints, expert career advice sessions on May 11th. So as mentioned, the Lannick team wants to meet you, and we're providing the opportunity at our professional development office occurring on May 11th. This unique networking opportunity is a 20-minute one-on-one meeting where you can also receive resume tips and job search advice from a Lannick team member. Upon registering in the PD portal, send an email to Career Services, including a copy of your resume to reserve your spot. So spaces are open, and make sure you register today. I also want to mention about our job board. CPA Ontario Talent is our official job board and your direct link to top employers recruiting leading financial professionals. Whether actively or passively searching for a job, this is a valuable resource to see who's hiring and what skills are in demand. Sign into the job board to view more details and apply for positions. As you can see here, there are some of our latest employers currently posting on the board. And also, Game Changers, the webinar series. I'd like to share the next lineup of our Game Changers webinar series. Free one-hour webinars with new topics and speakers that also qualify for CPD credits. Register through the PD portal and filter Career Services. Okay, so this concludes our webinar today. Thank you once again, Jon, and thank you everyone for joining us for the Your Next Promotion, It's Yours to Lose webinar today. We hope you found this session informative and received some good advice on how to get that next promotion opportunity. On behalf of CPA Ontario, we'd like to thank you for your time, and we hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.